Welcome to Boxcars 40K podcast. I'm Marcin and I'm playing Adeptus Custodes, although I'm not playing much lately.
And I'm Ryan, and I have been playing a little bit more. There's been a little bit less of a lockdown here in the United States, so I've been able to thankfully get out to some events, so it's been good.
You're lucky.
Yeah. We have a measure of luck here in that regard. Being safe, though, definitely. The tournaments that I've been to have been really good about maintaining the health and safety protocols, wearing masks, taking temperatures, maintaining social distance and stuff like that have been really pretty rigorously enforced. So had a couple scares there. One of the tournaments I went to ended up someone got caught the COVID, but it was not related to the tournament. So he was at the tournament and then he kind of later came down with the COVID. So there was some exposure there, but I don't think anyone else caught it. So.
But don't you, if you get in a space with a person that has COVID, do you get locked down for some period of time, or it doesn't work that way in the States?
Yeah, I mean they have lockdown restrictions. I mean it depends on depends on the nature of the interaction. Like I said, I was maintaining pretty stringent health and safety, social distancing stuff, and no one from the tournament caught it. Like no one caught it at the tournament. It's just that one of the guys later came down with it within the incubation period time. He got exposed to it through his wife, who was a health worker.
Okay.
So pretty much more closer contact, kind of situation. No one else caught it though at the event. So it worked. I think the protocols do work.
Okay.
Keeping the events safe and stuff. So yeah.
Okay, that's good. But enough about COVID. We've got enough that Nurgle disease in our lives.
All right.
Let's talk about your current incarnation of the list, maybe, and your recent tournaments. Anything interesting?
Yeah. So I did do pretty well in my last RTT. I had lost to a monster mash, but it was one of those games where there's where you just have a spree of kind of swing rolls that just really go badly for you and end up being significant in the game. So twice during that game, his Slaneshi demons survived when they shouldn't have on 2 or 1 wounds. And it was enough. It was kind of a list that I was playing. So the list I was playing was the three keepers, the new Mortarion, and the Greater Demon of Tzeentch with the 3-up invulnerable save. And then a smattering of Nurglings, some Demon Eddies, and some Flamers as well. And so this would have been my third time kind of going into this kind of list. So I was feeling pretty good about it. This was my double patrol. With just the 5 Virtus Praetors, just the 1 Caladius tank, 2 units of 3 Sagittarum, 1 unit of Sisters of Silence, Bite Captain, 2 Achilles Dreadnoughts, and then I actually had an Inquisitor and then a Calexis Assassin as well. And
Inquisitor, that's something new.
Yeah, I took an Inquisitor out for a spin. I wanted to try out some of the Psychic secondaries, and I felt like I kind of got the Linebreaker, Teleport Homer combination down well enough that I could make it work. And so kind of the bubble with that was I would drop my 2 Achilles in my Calexis kind of into the zone. My Calexis would be there to Soul Horror for the Achilles Dreadnoughts if they didn't make their charges. So that's a fight last 3-inch aura fight last ability. So he can kind of just hunker in between them and give him a 3-inch fight last aura basically, which is great for Achilles Dreadnoughts. Especially fighting things that charge you back. And then the Inquisitor then kind of just falls in with that group, and he just does, the Psychic Ritual, or he does Pierce the Veil, which was the psychic, kind of the psychic Linebreaker one. So I had a pretty good game plan for it. I took actually a Quillon Shield instead of Dreadhost as one of my And I also had a Terminator captain as well, in the Lars Terminator.
And I mean, Aquilon shield, so they can was it that they can shield characters?
Yeah. So I took
Okay.
the last unit in that army list was an Alaris captain who had he had the 2 extra runes for the captain commander trait, Indomitable Constitution. He had the half damage Warlord trait, and then he had a 3-up invulnerable save as his relic. So
Pretty beefy.
Revered Companion is the name of the Warlord trait. So yeah, he's got 9 wounds. He's toughness 5, 2-up, 3-up, half damage. Really good. And then he can take hits for anyone. He can take hits for the Inquisitor as long as he's within 3 inches of him. So the Inquisitor was pretty, and then the Dreadnoughts as well were both Aquilon shield in that list, so they could also take hits for the Inquisitor. So the Inquisitor was pretty safe in that bubble. And it was just more or less a matter of actually getting it into the enemy's deployment zone that became kind of the trick. And I found that the list just lacked enough firepower to make it almost untenable. I would have scored max. So the first game that I played, I'm trying to remember how. I want to say I'm remembering back to my most recent RTT, which was not the one with the monster mash, if I remember right. No, that was the tournament. Yeah, I'm trying to piece it together here. Have another conniption of memory here that you feel free to edit later. But I played Blood Angels. I tabled them turn 3, and then so I had to roll out Pierce the Veil for the rest of the turns that we didn't end up having to play. And I don't know if you're familiar with Pierce the Veil as a secondary, but the way it works is you have to pass a psychic test on a 4. You have to pass it twice to get 8 points. You have to pass it 4 times to get the full 15 points.
And that has to be the same character doing this, right?
And it's the same character doing this. Yeah. So I don't think it has to be the same character. I think it's just, but obviously he's a psychic character in the army. So
you don't have any choice in this.
I don't really have a choice. Yeah. So he does a turn 2 fine. He does a turn 3 just fine. And then I basically table him turn 3. We basically just kind of talk out the remainder of turn 3. He played a really kind of inefficient Blood Angels list. He had 2 big repulsors. He had like a big block of he had like 20 or 15 or 20 Death Company on foot, like intercessors. I can't remember. It was like probably 15. It was a big brick of them. And then he just had a smattering of Gravis Marines. Like he had like 3 aggressors. He had I think he had like 3 Inceptors and like 3 Eradicators. And so I pretty much just shot him at range, and then his army wasn't big enough to screen his deployment zone, so I just kind of dropped down behind some cover in his deployment zone, and then my Vertus Paraders pretty much just cleaned up the rest. I mean, they just the five of them killed both repulsor or salvo launchers, and most of the Death Company, and a smattering of other characters and such. So he just didn't really have an answer for that, and he was a fairly inexperienced player, and I was kind of coaching him during the time as well. But yeah, it was pretty quick, But I mean, I just I sunk the line breaker. I sunk it. So the Calexis does teleport Homer, the the Alaris blocks, and then the Inquisitor did Pierce the Veil. Sadly, that game, my first game, really doing this kind of combination, I roll a Perils on my 3rd attempt, and then I roll it into a 3. So then I could only score 8 points, because even if I had made that 4th one in the 5th turn, it wouldn't have mattered, because I had to so that was frustrating, but that was pretty much pure dice roll. I would have got it otherwise, like I said, big swingy kind of fluke dice roll. And then so I knew the theory worked. I mean, I knew there was a significant amount of lists that I could play that effectively against. There's a lot of lists that have 0 psychic defense. It's only one psychic character, so you're not really giving up anything for Abhor the Witch. I'm still only so I was at 4 characters with that army, which kind of put me in danger of assassinate, but 2 of them are very hard to kill, the Calexis and the Alaris Terminator Captain, and then one of them's being blocked by the Terminator Captain, and then the other one's a shield captain on a jet bike flying around with a bunch of Virtus Praetors. So I wasn't really concerned about that, but I did struggle a little bit with the CP economy again, taking the 2 patrol detachments. I only took 1 Eternal Penitent. Actually, I didn't take any Eternal Penitents with that list now that I'm thinking about it. I actually dropped that as well to just try to scrounge some more CP, especially for the Aquilon Shield special strat. So I ended up playing the Monster Mash again round 2, and I played Josh Minich, who's top tier in my or mid to top tier, mid top tier. I would say. I mean, he pretty consistently scores in the top 100. He's kind of got his own gaming club. So he's a good player. And I know he's played this list many, many times against many different styles of list. And, you know, he played Iron Hands when Iron Hands were big and did really well with Iron Hands. I remember losing to him with my Custodes back. First time I played him playing his Iron Hands, and he beat me at a GT. He's been playing 40K for a long time. And, you know, he knows how to use this Monster Mash list. And I got lucky initially. I got to turn 1. I killed one of his keepers right off the bat. Just shot it off the board with pretty much every gun in my army. I only deep struck 1 Dreadnought, and I deep struck my Alaris Terminator captain, hoping to kind of just send him in after some Nurglings or something on his backfield objective. And then my Calexis in my Inquisitor I put into my line, and I took Assassinate, Grind Them Down, and I took Line Breaker, which was kind of a mistake in hindsight. You know, I couldn't take any of the psych, so I you know, obviously wanted to take a Pour the Witch, but because I had a Psyker in my army, I couldn't do that. So I didn't have a lot of good alternatives, honestly. I probably should have taken While We Stand, We Fight as my secondary instead of Grind Them Down. Grind Them Down was a big gamble. Like I said, I mean, it cost me 6 points on just some bad, janky rolls where I should have killed the guy, and, you know, he didn't die. So basically what happens is I shoot his guy first turn off the board. I kind of position a little bit more, castle up. So I have my Sisters of Silence in front of my line. I have my Sagittarum as a second line to kind of prevent them from getting somehow shot off the board. He had some Flamers, and that was it as far as his shooting went. You know, but I still wanted to double up that line because the Slaneshi demons had like whips that they could shoot with that had enough potential that if I just stacked my Virtus Praetors right behind the Sisters, you know, you just got to kill a couple of Sisters and then he can charge my Virtus Praetors. And they have such a crazy long range movement. You know, he can get within 6 or 7 inches of my line, no problem. You know, 5, you know, even 4 inches. I mean, he got close quick, so fast. And so I kind of baited him to a center deploy. So like he did put his fastest one on the far left flank, the one that I shot off the board, and the rest of his guys kind of center deployed due to me placing my Palace Grav out on the right side. Kind of try to bait him into that, which worked. But I should have, you know, I ended up trying to center deploy him again, but he just basically ran right into his smite spam without sister protection. And that was a mistake that I made after turn 1. So into his turn 1, he basically just smite spammed, you know, the Palace Grab off the table, which didn't help me which was really dumb because I could have hit him. So I was trying to consolidate my force once I saw him so I was hoping I could slip him through, but he just moved up through the center and took advantage of that error and sent the next one in line. The next Keeper of Secrets basically came in, charged my line, killed 3, got stooping dived, right? So he comes in and, you know, charges my line. My Virtus Praetors are all lined up right behind my Sagittarum. So they, you know, 5-man unit of them stooping dives. And these guys now are in my other detachment, which was Emissaries Imperatus. So I had access to the Stratagem Emperor's Hand, and so this was a greater demon that had the -1 to wound exalted trait. So otherwise, I would have been wounding on 6s because it's toughness 7, strength 6, and then it's -1 to wound. So I spent 3 CP to stooping dive. I spent 1 CP for Emperor's Hand to ignore his -1 to wound, and then I spent 2 CP on Slayer of Nightmares to give them +1 to wound.
That's expensive investment.
So yeah, man. So I spent 6 CP trying to kill this one keeper of secrets, and then he spends for 1 CP. He spent stratagem, which made all my Virtus Praetors -1 attack. So I was like, oh no.
That's 20%, 25% less efficiency right away.
Yeah, significant. So I'm spending 6 CP. He's spending 1 CP. Basically burned all my CP with that move. And I get this Keeper of Secrets down to 2 wounds, who then promptly picks up a unit of Sagittarium that she got into combat with. So that was kind of a blow. And the issue with that was because then I knew, because this was, I only have the 1 unit of Virtus Praetors, so I have to be really careful with this unit because it's my only hammer unit with this army. My 2 dreadnoughts. The other issue that I ran into with that particular move is that I mispositioned my dreadnought so he couldn't heroically intervene. I would have spent another CP to heroically intervene that dreadnought into it, and that would have been a big clutch move for me, because had I been able to kill that Keeper of Secrets, my Virtus Praetors would have been free to shoot and charge then in my turn 2. And he'd moved Mortarion right up the center, right towards me as well. So Mortarion was sitting in prime position to get charged and shot at by everything in my army. And then the other keeper was still languishing on his left, my right side, his left flank, to kind of hedge that in, because he knew I had that Alaris captain coming in. But basically, after I killed 2 of his 3 keepers, he was kind of all in, just basically gunning for me and just trying to keep me off all the objectives while his Nurglings just racked up primary points, basically. So the way that panned out was I had to fall back with my Virtus Praetors, or else they would have been hit first in combat by his Keeper of Secrets, which would have killed 2 of them on average, and I just couldn't risk it. And so I had to fall back out of combat with them, shoot the that wounded Keeper of Secrets off the table, and try to position in such a way to basically keep Mortarion in place. So what I ended up having to do was I sent my Calexis forward. So my Calexis ran out, which he did a great job, because between him and the Sisters of Silence completely canked his entire psychic phase. The -3 just turned off everything Mortarion tried to do. The Keepers of Secrets couldn't smite anything. It was great. It felt really good, just completely shutting down his psychic phase. So I was like, the only way I'm going to basically be able to deal with Mortarion here is to try to delay him from going after my Virtus Praetors and my Blight Captain. And so I sent the Calexis out. Calexis charges Mortarion, and then my other Dreadnought in Deep Strike also drops in and makes the charge on Mortarion. So he just got charged by a Calexis and a Dreadnought here. And he does I did some plink damage. So Mortarion at this point had actually perilled once on his psychic powers and took 2 mortal wounds, which he didn't save. So he was down to 16 wounds. And then I chipped 3 damage off after I killed that Keeper of Secrets in my second shooting phase, the one that was wounded by the stooping dive. Mm-hmm. The rest of it I put in Mortarion and did 3 or 4 wounds on him. And then my Dreadnought charges in, and he brings him down to 7 wounds. So I took 11 wounds off Mortarion in single turn, which is a pretty sizable chunk, seeing as he only got charged by 1 Achilles Dreadnought, not 2. So my other Achilles Dreadnought had to kind of maneuver to get around, because I had him really badly positioned kind of next to this ruin. So he basically I positioned him to charge the Keeper of Secrets that was still alive if, for whatever reason, the Keeper of Secrets survived the rest of that turn. So he was not really in a position to do anything else than that. He just contributed his shooting, basically. And then the Calexis, lo and behold, he decides to put all of his attacks into Calexis to try to kill the Calexis, which he admitted later that was a tactical error. He should have just killed the Dreadnought. But the Calexis completely tanked an entire round of combat for Mortarion using his multiple attack profile. Didn't take a single wound. He did 7 hits and 6 wounds, and I just spiked a bunch of 4-up invulnerable saves and just walked away. So that was kind of a big easy turnaround.
But don't he hit Calexis on 6s?
You can only hit the Calexis on 6s, yeah. So even with 21 attacks or whatever he's swinging at me with. He still only got like 5 or 6 hits in, something like that. And then I spiked a bunch of 4-up saves. And I mean, they were all 1 damage anyway, so I was kind of like, he's going to live. With 5 wounds, he should live. And spiked the 4-ups, and I was happy with that. So that was a big turnaround. I felt better about having to fall back for Praetors at that point. And I fell them back towards his deployment zone. I also picked up a unit of flamers. I shot a bunch into his unit of flamers in the backfield because I realized after having to drop that dreadnought into my line that my Alaris captain, who also dropped in that turn, failed his 3d6 re-rolling charge on a unit of Demonettes, holding a backfield objective, which would have been perfect if I would have made that, because then he would have been holding that objective turn 3 quite easily, which gave him another kind of a respite. And it was a hold 2, hold 3 mission, so just was not great. I basically had to center my army on 1 to avoid getting smited off the board or hit all at the same time. So that was not going in my favor either. So I was like, okay, I need to throw my Virtus Praetors towards his backfield to get on a backfield objective and also score line breaker points. So when I fell back forward towards his deployment zone, along with my bike captain, he was able to make it into his deployment zone. Held up Mortarion for a turn. His third Keeper of Secret came and basically move blocked Mortarion because he kind of set him up in a ruin. So that third Keeper, and it was kind of in between 2 ruins. So the third Keeper of Secret kind of moved between Mortarion and my other Dreadnought, and charged the Dreadnought that was in combat with Mortarion, killed that Dreadnought, and then Mortarion killed the Calexis in my turn or not my turn, in his turn of fighting. So that was his turn 2, and so my turn 3 was base, and then his big Keeper of Secrets as well was right up the middle now at this point, bearing down on my lines, moving to contest the one objective that I was holding at that point, besides the back line that I got with my bike captain. So then I charged his Keeper of Secrets with my Dreadnought and basically pulverized the thing after shooting and everything. But then I can't remember. Let's see. So then he actually had killed all the sisters at that point. So there was some smite stuff going on. My Sagittarum pretty much dwindled to nothing at that point. I had to kind of come out and try to fight this Greater Demon of Tzeentch. Right. What did I do? So that turn, I think I just blocked the Greater Demon of Tzeentch and made him go after my Caladius tank, which he did pretty promptly. Kind of just jumped over the ruin and went after it. And my last unit of Sagittarum with my Inquisitor kind of were like in this little hallway in this ruin, so they were like kind of safe from getting charged. But they had to really kind of weasel their way in to kind of hold the objective. So I was in kind of a tight spot at that point. At that point, too, I was like, I'm going to get charged by Mortarion, and I'm not in a position to really take him on. So what I did was I just flew my Virtus Praetors up onto this ruin, and I positioned them in such a way that they couldn't be charged. So the way that I did that was, I moved them far enough away from the exterior wall that Mortarion couldn't just attack them 5 inches up, but close enough so that he couldn't physically land his base onto. All right.
That's a smart move. But they were inside the ruin, right?
So they were on top of the ruin. It was like there was like a nice platform that was big enough that I could have all 5 Virtus Praetors on top of it, but outside of an inch of the exterior wall. So that 5-inch vertical thing, he wouldn't be able to get contact. And then my bike captain was down below holding the objective, which was just far enough away from this gate that Mortarion couldn't physically fit his base into to make contact with my captain either. So basically, I flew up there and just shot him a bunch more with salvo launchers and got him down to 1 wound. And then my Alaris captain kind of caught up with those Demonettes and managed to take that objective. So I managed to score I started scoring 5 primary because I was holding my backfield objective just barely. And then I managed to score 10 because I held 3, but he also held 3. So So like the primaries were really like he had a good lead in the primaries, just because he had so many throwaway units in the way of the Nurglings to just use up, objective space, and I had to basically throw my whole army into his monsters, which is kind of the point of that list.
This is something I noticed that is happening a lot. People are taking throwaway units, like the 15-point dog in Space Wolves, just to block your objective for a turn or something.
Yep. Or just not be an issue and just hold an objective while all the rest of your army is just going forward.
Or block backfield from dropping.
Fencing the deep strike and screwing with the target priority stuff. Threat saturation becomes much easier to do when you can just hold backfield objectives with little units and throw all your scare units forward towards the enemy. It gets really tough to. So him getting to my line so fast, though, and tying up my Caladius tank, especially, was, and tying up all my Sagittarium was kind of the clutch move that kept me, because otherwise I would have been able to shoot his Nurglings off the board. And I did actually take out a unit of Nurglings turn 1 along with that unit of, or that Keeper of Secrets that I killed. So, I mean, like, the big thing that lost me the game was mispositioning that Achilles Dreadnought and not killing that Keeper of Secrets when she charged my lines, because that would have set me up to basically charge Mortarion with 2 Keepers of Secrets, or 2 Dreadnoughts and my unit of Praetors and my Bite Captain, which I think would have been enough to do it. Honestly, after a good round of shooting, I think that would have been enough. And from there, it would have just been rinse and repeat while shooting Nurglings. So that basically kind of, was the clutch thing that happened. The big mistake that I made. And then obviously throwing that Palace Grab was not a smart move. I should have just buried him on the other corner and just kept him in like a reserve element, or try to push him into line breaker scoring position so I could have focused a little bit better with my Vertus Praetors. And just helped kill Nurglings and Demon Eddies and things like that. That would help a lot.
What is your tip, so to say, to fighting versus that list for the?
Yeah, so I mean, it's
for Custodes.
So the big move is fencing the Vertus Praetors and setting up that stooping dive, because that's a list that they have to really just throw at you, especially against a good shooting army of Adeptus Custodes. If you got Caladius tank, if you got even a Telemon, if you got Sagittarium, and you got salvo launchers, like, you can pretty comfortably pick up a Keeper of Secrets in a turn. With mass fire, it's not hard to do. Even with -1 to wound, even with a 4-up invul, like, usually there's enough high damage volume there that it's enough to kill them.
Yeah, that's my experience as well. If you find space and can keep the distance, you can just blood them out one by one.
Yep. And then the second piece of that is, so you're forcing them then to play into your line, which means then you screen your Vertus Praetors with your infantry, and then you wait until they charge your line, and you can then jump your infantry and stooping dive into the unit. So obviously it's expensive to do that with CP. And if he does it with multiple units, then it can get really kind of hairy. But to me, that's the best way to kind of counter it. I've set my new list up. So the new list that I've crafted, I've kind of taken in some of the lessons and, applied some things that I learned, and I think it's a better list for taking on Monster Mash. So, but we'll see, because I did drop one of the Achilles Dreadnoughts, so I feel a little bit vulnerable on account of that, but I have way more CP because I only have the one. So I only have one Achilles Dreadnought. I have only one Captain. I have only one patrol detachment. So I actually start with 10 CP. So I've actually managed to do stooping dive a couple of times. I've only played the list once, but I was able to do actually stooping dive twice, or have the CP to do it twice, which is good. And I actually have 2 big units of Vertus Praetors in this list as well, which I think at the end of the day have a little bit better efficiency throughout the game than just a single Achilles Dreadnought. A lot of times my one Achilles, my Achilles Dreadnoughts are kind of just on objective watch. They drop in and they, while the Vertus Praetors pretty consistently do heavy lifting. So it's a Emissaries Imperatus list that really just kind of centers around that Hand of the Emperor stratagem. 2 Caladius tanks, 1 unit of 5, 1 unit of 4 Virtus Praetors, 1 Achilles Dreadnought, Calexis, 1 unit of 5 Sagittarum, as opposed to 2 units of 3, and then 1 unit of 5 Sisters of the Silence. So it's a little bit more compact as well.
So no Inquisitor anymore?
No, I dropped the Inquisitor. I liked, I liked using the Inquisitor for some of those gimme points, those pickup points, and it was really nice just not having to deal with a secondary, but I found actually in my third game, I played with that list, I played Admech, and he was a really good Admech player. He had like 5 robots, a bunch of tanks, and tons of dogs, and so I was like, there's just no way I'm going to be able to sneak in my units here, and we played on corners. Whatever the mission is, we played in our corner deployments. So it was like one of the smallest, easiest deployment zones to screen out. And I was just like, even if he lets me drop my 2 Dreadnoughts and my Alaris Captain and my Calexis and my Inquisitor into his backline, like I knew like he would pick that whole blob up with probably just his robots, with Wrath of Mars and rerolls from Call and all that. I was just like, there's just no way I'm going to throw that away. So there was a big kind of line of sight blocking screen in the middle, or in a piece of terrain. So I decided to go with Psychic Ritual, which is the one where you do it it's like on a 3. You roll a 3, you get the power off, and you have to do it. You just have to do it 3 times within the center, and then you get the max 15 points. So arguably easier than Pierce the Veil. For whatever reason. And I did manage to max that score in that game with the Inquisitor as well, which was good. My Inquisitor actually, he did splendidly in that second match. So he actually charged the Greater Demon of Tzeentch and almost lived with 1 wound. I gave him the 4-up invul and the -1 to wound, Dark Shroud Relic. And he had a Demon Hammer. He was just going to town. And then in the third match, though, when he actually ended up killing Belisarius Call in single combat, which was great too, with his Demon Hammer. So I mean, I was actually quite fond of the Inquisitor. I think he played really well. He accomplished mostly, besides some really fluky rolls and some kind of bad matchups. I mean, it's tough because like as soon as I walked, so I was like, that second match was around. I was kind of like, okay, all this demon stuff is going to come right at me. But if the moment that I take an Inquisitor and I say Pierce the Veil, he's going to send his big chicken after him, and he's going to mind zap him and take away his psychic power. So like, so he took that ability. So all he has to do is deny my Pierce the Veil once, and then I can't use Pierce the Veil anymore the rest of the game. So he basically has to make a single deny roll, and I lose all of those secondary points immediately. So I was just like, that was just like bad matchup, and that's kind of, I think, the biggest thing that kind of tanked him for me, and they kind of led me to go, he's nice to have. However, there's just too many really, really hard counters, and it is like I had to basically build a list around him, to actually make him work.
Yeah. On the other hand, if you don't take Inquisitor, then that matchup is much easier with Abhor the Witch, right?
Exactly. So I'm really kind of keeping my losses in mind as far as matchups go. And that was a big swing because I struggled with those secondaries that turn. I was struggling with grinding them down because demons, and but I didn't have a lot of good alternatives either, so I was kind of stuck on that one. And I think being able to take Abhor the Witch against that list is really good. I did take Assassinate, and I maxed Assassinate. I ended up killing all his demon characters, but he just beat me in the primaries because I just couldn't quite. I mean, I almost tabled him, and I had still like 60% of my forces left. But I just couldn't score those primaries. If it was a 1 objective mission, I would have won the game. Had it played out the exact same way. But I just couldn't get on enough. I couldn't get on enough objectives with that setup, and that is kind of the issue with the list. is that it makes, it is hard to score those secondary points. But I think the one that I have designed now is better for grinding them down because it's a little bit more killing. It's got a little more killing power behind it. It's much more CP efficient. So I can afford to do stooping dive more than once. The Emperor's Hand is just a stellar stratagem, especially when you're fighting anything that has -1 to wound. You can just blank that off. You can ignore cover. You can ignore all minus hit penalties. So that unit of 5 Sagittarum now is substantially more efficient than even 2 units of 3 with that stratagem because they're hitting on 3s usually because I'm either shooting both of their weapons or I'm advancing. And with the Emperor's Hand stratagem, it ignores negative hit modifiers. So you pick a unit in your shooting phase, you ignore negative hit modifiers, and it's basically an additional AP because it ignores cover. So in a lot of situations, you're ignoring cover, you're basically getting an additional AP on top of that. So you're always hitting on 2s then with all 4 of your shots, rather than hitting on 3s when, you're slinging, 15, you're slinging 20 shots down range, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s rather than 3s, rerolling 1s, is substantially better. Maximizing that efficiency. I mean, you're looking at basically getting an additional 3 or 4 hits every turn with just that 1 unit of Sagittarum. And then the nice thing too is it really works well with the bikes as well. Like I said, just fighting the monster mash as one, just being able to pay 1 CP to negate that -1 to wound and basically increase your wounds by 100%, right? So you go from hitting on 6s to hitting on 5s and 6s, for 1 CP rather than paying 2 CP to do +1 to wound for Slayer of Nightmares. And not only that, but you can use it for their secondary profile in the salvo launcher for the flak burst missile when you're shooting at like anti-infantry horde. It's normally -1 to hit anything that doesn't have the fly keyword, right? So you get D3 shots blast on a big unit of guardsmen or a big unit of orc boys, but you're -1 to wound, so you're hitting on 3s, rerolling 1. So you get that bad janky roll full of 2s, and suddenly you think with your 15 shots you should kill that unit of 10 guardsmen, but you drop 6 of them. Now suddenly you can auto pass and keep them on objective or something. It can get kind of annoying. So having that stratagem in the hopper to go, I'm going to ignore that -1 to hit. I'm going to maximize that hit roll. And then hopefully that wound roll as well. Wounding on 2s, a lot of toughness 3 targets. It just has a ton of utility, and there's just so many ways to use it and use it well and use it effectively. I think it's an auto take for me now, honestly. I really thought about it, play testing with the Imperatus. I think really just kind of opened my eyes to that. I mean, I was using it consistently when I just had the 3-man units of Sagittarum, and it was just kind of like, I wish I could do this for 5 of them. So I built a list.
Yeah.
Initially, I built this list for Dreadhost, and I played a pickup game against Dark Angels with this list, and I took All-Seeing Annihilator because I was just hoping to. I just was one bike captain, so I was just hoping to basically just get tons of 6s on my big units of Virtus Praetors, and so I had to drop Emperor's Companion, and I played a game against Blood Angels as well that same day, a pickup game, and I won the Dark Angels game. I lost the Blood Angels game again because of some really really janky stuff that just came out of left field. It was just like, oh my goodness, just failure to kill basically that lost me the game. But let me get back to AdMech, and I'll talk about those other games with the new lists. Kind of transition a little bit more why I changed the lists to what it is now, and why I'm pretty much going to stick with this list. So the third game for the AdMech was really, really cagey because I didn't have the same firepower that I was used to, especially lacking an Ares gunship. So I used to just table AdMech fast, mostly because of the Ares gunship and the supporting like 2 Caladius tanks that I had. And I only had 1 Caladius tank and a Palace Grav, so I had to be a lot more careful. And I only had the 1 blaze cannon on the Palace Grav attack, so like I had to be really careful with, and only 5 Virtus Praetors for salvo launchers. So I had to be cagey, man, with my shooting.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, but when we are for a moment on a Ares gunship, yes. Ares Gate found its end, I think, with the newest FAQ. So
I think so. I think
basically you were right, right?
Yeah, I was right. Yeah, thankfully. Wouldn't have heard the end of that if I hadn't been. I mean, I'll say they ruled in my favor. I don't really think. I mean, I know I interpreted the rules correctly, but there was enough people in the community saying otherwise that they could have easily, I think, ruled it the other way. But yes, they did rule in my favor, and so I was very thankful for that. But it's crazy because some people were still saying, even after that FAQ, that the Ares gunship still takes the penalty basically for not being able to fit within or wholly within the deployment zone in the base of the model rather than the base, just for that particular, which again just was the whole issue with it, was just like, you use the base, not the model. If the model has a base, and the fact that they're just kind of like switching that rule off to conveniently try to penalize an opponent's army, was very underhanded. And I'm thankful that they ruled the way they did, but it was crazy because it still left enough ambiguity that I was hearing from people that the Ares gunship should still be penalized and stuff. And I was just like, this is crazy, you guys. But I mean, that just goes to show, though. I mean, when people are trying to twist and bend the rules, it doesn't matter how clearly you write them. They're going to try to twist and bend the rules. That's just like they know that's what they were doing.
It seems like somebody at Games Workshop listened to all the records. That was.
I'm thankful that they actually kind of took a clear-headed approach to it and didn't try to create more rules jank for us to have to deal with. So that was good. So like I was kind of hurting for the long-range firepower of that, the flat 6 damage, especially against those robots. It's really, really nice. I mean, the Ares gunship is like super good against shooting robots, because they're just, toughness 7. So I'm wounded on 2s with the Magna Blaze. He's got like a 5-up invulnerable save, I think, usually, unless he does something about that. And it's just flat 6 damage, so he just picks up a whole robot, plus D3, So, I mean, you get 3 shots with that thing, you can just really smoke, and then 2 blaze cannons on top, 2 heavy Arachnus blaze cannons on top of that, which both can do 6 damage each. I mean, you can just literally pick up a unit of 4 or 5 robots if you roll good, And, just the blaze cannons being able to reroll wounds on those vehicles, was not having those in my Caladius tanks was, I mean, I was kind of looking at it going, this is actually going to be a lot harder than I've faced in the past. So the first time I was playing Admech with that double patrol, having only 5 Virtus Praetors too. It's just, it was a list that really was playing into those secondaries that I talked about, those Line Breaker, Teleport Homer, Pierce the Veil, kind of triple secondary. And I made that game really, really tough. So I couldn't even do that. I did end up taking Line Breaker, I think, just because I had no better option. I took Grind Them Down, and I took the Psychic Ritual. So basically, I ended up pushing hard into the center and basically just shooting at his dogs for most of the beginning of the game, just to kind of stay ahead in primary. I killed one of his copters. He had a couple of copters, big unit of robots, bunch of dogs. He had a big unit of the combat priests in a boat, in a transport, that he ended up trying to center move, and I just ended up blowing up the boat and wiping that squad with my Virtus Praetors. But then my Virtus Praetors promptly got shot off the board by his robots. So it was kind of a trade, but it kept me in the center and kept me doing the Psychic Ritual. And then my Dreadnoughts come in, and they wreck a bunch of the robots with their shooting and their combined shooting with the Caladius tanks. And then my salvo launchers also got killed enough, so I kind of degraded them a little bit prior to that. And then basically the game ended, so I kept him off most of the primary objectives, and kind of kept him in his corner, which helped a lot. So my Sisters of Silence were picking up points. I was picking up points for being in the center. And then my Caladius tank was holding a backfill objective. So I was outscoring him in primaries most of the game. And then, so then there was just kind of this big blow up between his stuff and my stuff, his robots, my tanks and bikes and stuff. And basically at the end of the game, I had 3 models. I had my Caladius tank, my Inquisitor, and I had 1 Sagittarum left. And that's all I had. And he had 1 gunboat, and I think it was like one of his dogs survived, or a unit of no, they died too. He's like one gunboat left, and one of his like Manipulus character that was like hiding in the ruin. And we talked it out because it's just, even if he shot everything I had left on the board, it wouldn't have mattered as far as scoring. And it was one of those games that we just were constantly like analyzing every move. I mean, we took the whole time basically, and even talked out the last full turn, and just crazy caging, like crazy bloody game. But yeah, I was really feeling that not having those extra shooting units, and yeah, I mean, like, and that was the kind of the review of it was like, yes, these secondaries can be gimmies, but usually it's only when I'm really, really just smashing my opponent anyways, and it doesn't really matter then, you know. I mean, that was kind of the thing. I could think of a few of my matchups where it might have worked out in my favor a little bit, but you know, I played a Necron army with a similar kind of setup where I took Teleport Homer Linebreaker. And like, yeah, it was good because it was a good trade in a way, because it forced him to spread the whole field, and it kind of kept his units kind of in his field for a time, which was good because then I could comfortably, you know, shoot at him and pick up primary scores and kind of just set my army up to really punch in where I want to. But you have to sacrifice some secondaries that way, and so. The other issue with it is just it's one of those really obvious plays as well. So that was the other issue that I had with that. Is just like it's really super obvious what you're trying to do when you take all three line breaking secondaries. Yeah. So that was an issue as well, that I think that this current list that I have kind of helps cover up. So yeah, I mean, I learned how to use. I mean, it felt good just getting some reps in with the Inquisitor. First time I was using him, it felt good doing as well as I did at that RTT, using basically a new list against a very experienced player and kind of losing by a nose. But with a very strong list.
So basically, to have Inquisitor and have him survive, you would have to take that Shield Captain, right? With the possibility to block damage coming into Inquisitor.
Potentially, yes. I mean, you know, anything can block for the character, obviously.
Or can you just, you know, good placing and play, keep him alive without that?
Yes, sir. Yeah. I mean, you can block the Inquisitor with anything, but the reason why I set it up the way that I did was because I wanted to keep as small of a line breaker footprint as possible. You know, so potentially I would only be sending the Captain and the Inquisitor behind enemy lines. Right, because that would be enough for Linebreaker. My Captain can do Teleport Homer, and he can do Pierce the Veil, and then he can block for the Inquisitor and basically take any kind of incoming fire, just the one model. You know, so that was kind of the idea, the thinking behind that. You know, the less models, the better. It's easier to find those little holes in your enemy's deployment zone, so on and so forth. And like, it's a list that I have in my back pocket. You know, that I might bust out for an RTT. Or if something changes in the meta where I look at it and go, you know, actually, this is going to be really, really effective. Hey, my Venatari just came in.
Oh.
I got in the mail. Awesome. I think I did order. Yeah, I got 6 of them. Cool, man. Well, that's exciting. So yeah, it's a good list for me. And but like I said, competitively, I really kind of, once the ITC season ended, I took 12th overall, which is great. I felt really good about that. And then I just barely took the first place for the Adeptus Custodes bracket. Aaron Cook actually been kind of chasing for a while. He won won a grand tournament, and actually beat Dan Salmons, who is the number 1 player in the ITC for this past season. He beat Dan Salmons with Adeptus Custodes. Dan was playing Orc Buggy list, so I was pretty excited to see that as well. So maybe that's something we can talk about next time in a little more detail.
Yeah, sure.
because I'd be interested in actually
I'm also
hearing.
interested in what lists are emerging, because I heard some with the point drops in sword and board custodes. I heard about a list 3 units of 10 with the sword and board, and just swarm the table with basically
So
unkillable or very hard to kill 1+,
Yep,
3+ dudes. That's something I haven't tried because I don't have that many
same here.
models. So
I just never like that. I mean, I
no,
know
that's not.
for the
No,
LVL
we talked
nope.
about it many times. It's very static list, right? You just go
Yeah,
there and present a question to your opponent. Can you deal with
right.
this? And
It's
if
a
he
list.
can't,
Go ahead.
if he can't, he will just lose on scenario probably, and if he
Right.
can, then you will probably lose, because all the initiative is on the opponent's side, right?
Yeah, it's a list that I know how to beat. That's like kind of my standard, like for play. Like if it's a list that I know my Adeptus Custodes army can beat, like pretty much every time. I just don't see any point in taking it. You know, most of my lists, I look at my list and go, yeah, man, I could really smash this list. I mean, I probably wouldn't kill every guy, but I wouldn't need to. You know, I'd really only need to kill one unit. You know, keep you on 2 objectives, or force you to leave an objective and only hold 1, and just basically kite your unit around the whole game. You know, to me, it's not. And then just pick up anything that is not part of that shield, board and sword. But the Nopen, though, the Nopen played in the Nopen, the list that won was a Sisters Adeptus Custodes hybrid. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but I heard about that.
Yeah, so that was kind of where the whole hashtag shield wall thing kind of came back. Was the list had like 3 units of 3 and 1, or 2 units of 3, 1 unit of 4, something like that. Board and sword. Ended up beating Drukhari, sort of a dark horse Drukhari list in the last round, which was played by Nick Nanavani from Art of War, and the Art of War guys. So different channel podcasts, yeah. So yeah, I mean, they definitely have play. I like I said, I myself have never really been privy to them. Maybe because they've been a spam in the past, and I've just always kind of tried to, with the exception of bikes, I've really kind of stayed away from trying to spam things at any time. So I did, just kind of as maybe a closing thing, I did come up with a new list. I did play test it as Dreadhost. Kind of didn't like it. Just kind of fell into some inefficiencies. My bike captain ended up separated from my both unit separators, and versus the Blood Angels, I ended up losing the game because I couldn't reroll his damage rolls, which was kind of like a telltale sign that I should switch back to what I was normally playing. It's a big swing move. He dropped his the Sanguinor behind my lines and ended up getting into my backfield objective and tagging one of my tanks. Did tons of damage to it. And so I was like, okay, so if he takes this objective, he scores like 4 points for Relentless Assault, or he already scored like 4 points for Relentless Assault, but he's going to score another 4 points for Relentless Assault if he keeps that unit behind enemy lines. He scores 5 points for holding the primary, and then blocks 5 of my points for taking the primary. And just a slew, like I lose 3 points for Assassin. There's just like a slew of point swings that basically were hinging on this Sanguinor living or dying in my backfield. Like everything in my backfield is still kind of in my backfield because these Blood Angels and lots of Sanguinary Guard and things. So I was struggling to kind of get into his line. We kind of met in the middle, both just like lost a bunch of stuff, and then both just kind of backed off and just started shooting at each other at range. And then his Sanguinor just dropped in and made a 10-inch charge with my tank, did a bunch of damage to it. And then I was like, okay, so I back him off. He took like 2 wounds. He took 2 wounds before he jumped out. So like he took a couple wounds from Virtus Praetors previously. So I back the tank out. I fall back with the tank. And I turned the Sagittarm that way with all their Adaptus destructors, five Adaptus destructors, and then my bike captain basically flies right into his face. And so I'm looking at it going, okay, I can shoot at him with 5 Adaptus destructors, a salvo launcher, and then fight him in the combat with my bike captain. Should be able to kill, I think he had 3 or 4 wounds, something like that. Sanguinor.
Yeah.
You know, toughness 4 up invul. Like, I was like, this should be doable. I get, 5 wounds. So yeah, so he's untouched. And what happened was, I shot
also
him.
Feel no pain, right? Does he have a
No, he doesn't. No, he's just
okay.
-1 to hit. But that didn't, my Sagittarm didn't care because they were shooting both their profiles.
Okay.
Again, this was Dreadhost, so I didn't have that stratagem. So I wound him with 1 Adaptus destructor, and it puts him down to 2 wounds. My salvo launcher misses on a 2 because he's -1 to hit, so I can't reroll that unless I have a CP at that point. And so basically, I'm going, okay, my bike captain has to do 2 wounds on a toughness 4 up invulnerable save model with 5 attacks and exploding 6s. So my bike captain charges, does 5 wounds. He saves. He saves all of them. The only thing that he failed to save out of all that was just the 1 Adaptus destructor hit. So, and I wounded with 4 Adaptus destructors. He saves 3 out of 4 of those, and then bike captain misses his salvo launcher shot. 5 wounds, saves 5 out of 5 of his. So he made 8 out of 9 of his 4 up invuls. I would have won the game if any one of those had failed. If any one of those had failed, I would have killed him. I would have stopped like 8 points of his secondary. I would have had another 10 points of primary. And then plus my tank would have been alive. So what ended up happening was, so he survives. And then not only that, just to add insult to injury, he turns around and just kills my bike captain in 1 round of combat. Full wounds, everything. I didn't have, I gave him the Raiment of Sorrows. I've been trying out the Raiment of Sorrows. So he just had a 4 up 2, but he's, I make average rolls. I'm okay. He just all hits, all wounds, like 6 attacks, all of 2 damage. And I just roll 2 out of 6 invulnerable saves. And kills him on 8 wounds. So I was just oh my goodness. It was one of those games.
You had to make statistics of the table match. So if he made all the saves, you had to fail all yours.
I told him after the game. I was like, at this, he's like, yeah, I bet you glad it didn't happen at Grand Tournament. I was like, yeah, if it was a Grand Tournament, I wouldn't have done that. I would have just shot the whole unit of Sagittarm at him. But since we were playing kind of a pickup game, I thought that was a risk I was willing to take. But if it had been a GT, I would have looked at the options and been like, okay, if he survives, this is what's going to happen. And I just would not have wasted so the Sagittarm ended up shooting at Eradicators. He had 3 Eradicators, which was fine because it ended up being overkill. And my salvo launchers just went into went into Blade Guard that they were going to charge and wipe off the board anyways. So in hindsight, even in that game, it didn't make any really sense for me not to just shoot everything from the Sagittarm into the Sanguinor. But I was just overconfident. I was like, my bike captain by himself should be a match for the Sanguinor on the charge. Should be. But I was also partly thinking reroll damage rolls, kind of in the back of my mind, which he didn't have. Had he been able to reroll his damage rolls, I mean, it wouldn't have mattered because he spiked all his 4 up invuls anyways. But, and I also completely forgot to do Fight on Death because he had the Sorrows, he had the Raiment of Sorrows. So on a 4 up, he could have got another hit. He could have struck again with 1 last hit would have been enough to kill him, which would have been the same swing. So I also forgot to do that. So made a ton of mistakes on that one move, and it just cost me the game by 15 points, which, really sucked. But I didn't feel so bad because it was the guy. It's the guy I played, Dom. He's a guy who's running the place. So the place we played at, the Fabricators Forge, is a gaming club he just opened up. So I didn't feel so bad because he owns the place, and also he's the guy who started the Steel City Legion in the club I've been sort of representing for the last whole tournament season. So it was what it was. But after that game, I was kind of like, I don't like the dread host. You know, like if I had more stuff deep striking in, just the fact that I went also down to one dreadnought, I was just kind of like, and I don't really need to charge him more often than not, you know, except in some very particular situations. And then I don't really increase that chance too much. I mean, a 3d6 rerollable charge, you know, is, yeah, I mean, it is better, but I mean, I've failed plenty of 3d6 rerollable charges at this point to know that it's not infallible.
But so do you think Emissaries Imperatus is the way to go for now for you?
For me, yeah, 100%. This list that I made, I am pretty much committing to compete with it through the spring. I've signed up for a bunch of tournaments, bunch of big tournaments through May, actually. I have like 6 or 7 big tournaments that I'll be going to. And I plan on sticking with this list pretty much the whole time. I've already kind of considered some very minor changes, but I went back to the Emperor's Companion so I can reroll those damage rolls. I kept the Raiment of Sorrows because I really think with 9 versus I get a fight with one attack or shoot the salvo launcher, which can really, really turn a game, you know?
Yeah.
It makes it a little bit harder to kill them, you know, without having to take, you know, some reprisal. You know, if he comes down with a big unit of Inceptors and shoots 4 of my Virtus Praetors off the table, I get 4 salvo launcher shots, you know, at his other unit of Inceptors I haven't shot yet, you know, which could...
So basically, you think that Emperor's Hand stratagem is worth taking Emissaries Imperatus for now, at least over the other Dread hosts or the other shield hosts. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the way
because I never considered, because there are so many good options here, and Grim Responsibility always tempted me so much.
Yeah. I honestly think overall it is better, and this is the way I break it down. And I think mostly people haven't chose it because of ignorance. They don't realize how good it is against other armies, because on paper it doesn't seem as good unless you actually know what other people are playing, and you actually have like an awareness of its use. So, you know, so like I said, the way I've broken it down is, you know, the Dread Host stratagem you can really only use once a game, right? Golden Light of Moriatis, you deep strike in, and that's it. You know, you're never going to use that stratagem again. So you're looking at a one-time use with that. You know, All-Seeing Annihilator sure is a good warlord trait, but to me, you know, it's not good enough, in my opinion, to kind of counteract or to kind of measure up, especially when you can take another really good strategy or a warlord trait like the Emperor's Companion, where you're rerolling your captain's damage rolls, you know, especially for the salvo launcher, and with Slayer of the Unclean, and that goes up to 2d3 or 2d6, like that can be really, really effective being able to re-roll that. If you spike those 2s or whatever, you know, roll double 1s or something on your damage, you can re-roll that. You know, that's a lot of re-rolls that you get that you might otherwise be using CP for. And then I found also it's usually overkill. So usually when I'm actually getting exploding 6s, and I'm getting a lot of exploding 6s, it's because I have a big unit of Virtus Praetors charging something, and they're going to kill the thing anyways, you know, without exploding 6s. Or they're not going to kill the thing, and it's going to be really tough anyway. So, you know, to me, it was just kind of like I didn't really need it. The nice thing about the Emperor's Companions, it's so granular that there's like it is situational, but you can find situations to use it. You know, there's actual situations that come up where it's like, I'm really glad I had that reroll damage roll there. Yeah. You know, but the exploding 6s thing, to me, hasn't come up yet. There's just too many things you have to have in play. You have to have your Bite Captain next to your Virtus Praetors, which have to be charging with a bunch of stuff, you know, to actually make it effective. And it's to me, it's just kind of you're already over the tipping point when your Virtus Praetors are getting 20 attacks on a unit. You know, even if you're wounding on 5s, you know, like, or 6s. So they don't have the Emperor's Hand. So like they're wounding on 6s as Dreados. I have to spend 2 CP to bring it down to 5s, you know. Some big up to 7 thing with -1 to wound. You know?
The more I read that stratagem, I really think it's a for 1 CP is incredible stratagem.
It is. It's a hidden gem. It really
attack, hit, wound, armor penetration modifiers, and cover as well. So
so like things like ignore -1, -2 for salamanders or sisters of battle don't come into play with that. I can use that on my Caladius tanks.
Yeah.
You know, so
I
my
think it doesn't ignore the transhuman, but it ignores everything else. But
right. So it ignores AP modifiers. So like if I'm shooting at a big unit of Sisters of Silence that have the the valorous, valorous heart, stoic, tail of stoic, whatever, I can pay a CP on my Caladius tank, and instead of him getting a 3-up, instead of him getting a 3-up armor save, now he's getting a 5-up armor save. Like that's a big deal, especially if I'm shooting at a unit of like Retributors or something that I really, really need to shoot off the board, or he's gonna kill my Caladius tanks, or big unit of Virtus Praetors or something. So yeah, I mean, and again, it's a stratagem that you can use all the time. Like it's kind of like Grim Responsibility in that regard. You can use it in the shooting and the fight phase, but it's an offensive strat. And this is the second piece of my argument for it, is that I've always found playing Custodes, it's always better to have a stronger offense than it is to have a stronger defense. A lot of people play Custodes really defensively, and they're not really defensive gurus. They have a lot of points being sunk into their offensive capabilities. When you buy a Telemon or you buy a unit of Virtus Praetors or Shield, Board, and Sword guys, a lot of those points go to the fact that they're neg 3 AP, D3 damage, 3 attacks. Like a lot of the points get sunk into that, and when all you use them for is just standing on an objective and you're not actually getting any play with their combat abilities, you lose a lot of your efficiency that way. And so I look at a stratagem like the Emperor's Hand, and it just wraps so much into just a 1 CP strat, of like, I'm shooting at your just shooting at a big 10 block unit of Sisters of Battle, Retributor squad, 4 multi-meltas. You're staring down the barrel of 4 multi-meltas turn 1. You got a couple of Caladius tanks that are -2 AP that he's going to ignore, right? So he's going to get a 2+ armor save against your Caladius tank shooting turn 1, right? You're hitting on 2s, you're wounding on 2s. So you get 14 wounds, you might kill 2 Sisters. You might kill 3 Sisters, You use 1 CP stratagem, they don't get cover, they don't ignore neg 1, neg 2 AP anymore. Now they have a 5-up save. So now you're 14 shots, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s. Suddenly he's making 5-up armor saves rather than 2-up armor saves. For 1 CP, that's a 10-man unit that's a 10 lady unit of Retributors off the table. Like there they go,
With 1 CP you will go around all the defensive buffs, the Space Wolves that have the cover, mobile cover with the power, with neck to hit, etc. Everything's gone with 1 CP. Incredible.
1 CP, man, it's really good.
I need to test it. I need to test it for sure.
I agree. I mean, I think it is situational, but there's such a utility in it. Like there's so many situations you can use it for. Like that's just one example. Like I said, I have 9 Virtus Praetors and 5 Sagittarum as the kind of the backbone of my army. Besides the Caladius tanks, giving them ignore cover is great. Like having ignore cover for any one of those units is really good. And then, like I said, both of those units have a profile that's -1 to hit innately, So if I'm shooting with 2 weapons or I'm shooting with my flak burst missiles at something that doesn't have the fly keyword, I'm -1 to hit. So like, there's never going to be a situation where I'm gonna sit down and be like, there's no way I can use the Emperor's Hand stratagem right now. Whether it's in shooting or combat,
you're doubling the efficiency.
Yeah, man. Like that -1 to wound can be so game changing, and just being able to pay 1 CP to negate that is really, really good.
Yeah.
So I really feel good about it, honestly. I think it's kind of the diamond in the rough that everyone's been missing. And just because
me included, I just skipped over it.
I almost went with Dreadhost. Like when I sat down and I was like, okay, after I kind of evaluated my experience, I was like, what do I want to play into in this season opener? Like, what do I really want to invest in? Initially, it was just kind of like Dreadhost because they're, because that's going to really maximize my Virtus Praetors, and it's going to, be a really killy list. And I played a couple games with it, and I was like, okay, it's okay, but I was really just. Each phase I was going through, I was really just missing that Emperor's Hand stratagem. Like I could have really used that Emperor's Hand stratagem in this situation or that situation. And so yeah, it just kind of dawned on me like this is actually, and I haven't played it against Sisters of Battle yet. But the fact that, or Salamanders for that reason, to that effect either. So to me, I think it's going to be a little bit of surprise to people. I think like I said, I think it's a diamond in the rough. I think it's really, really good. A lot of people have been missing out on it. Just focusing on the dread host or the grim responsibility. And like I said, trying to play offensive more than defensive. But I mean, it really is the offensive version of the grim responsibility strap. It brings a lot to the table. So, but that's all I got. That's all I got. I know you're trying to wrap up here. So.
All right. Okay, Ryan. Let's finish with that for today, and we'll try to meet soon, like in 2 weeks. I'm going for holiday for 2 weeks, but after that I will probably not play during the holiday, but afterwards I will try to get some games in so we can.
Sounds good. Well, like I said, I got a pretty packed tournament season coming up here, so we'll have plenty to talk about in the next.
Yeah, I think that Poland is also going to loosen up on the restrictions soon, so I'll probably start going to some tournaments.
Sounds good.
As well.
That sounds
all right.
Great.
Thanks for the talk and nice tips for my future tests.
Yep, sounds good. Sounds good, Marcin.
Okay, bye, Ryan.
Bye-bye.